Welcome back to Nerdmusement. If it's amusing to nerds, it's Nerdmusement. And here's my co-host,
Quinn. Here as always.
Yes. And I am the Count of Arcadia. Let's go through the topics tonight. Quinn, why don't we have you start us off?
Well, let's see. Today we're going to be talking about BoardGameGeek.com had their BGG convention here in Dallas, so we're going to talk about that. Ghostbusters Afterlife came out this weekend. We're going to be talking about that. IAPA 2021 was also recently. That's the main convention for basically roller coaster and other entertainment manufacturers showing off the new designs. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Recently, Robert Thurston, the author of various science fiction franchises, but probably most important to us of several important Battletech books, passed away. So we want to talk about him a little bit. And I think that's all we have. Also, one other item I wanted to bring up, but we'll come back to that later. Surprise item. We'll get to that in good time. Oh, yes.
Okie doke. Well, welcome back to Nerdmusement. Let's go.
All right. So let's start out with BGG Con. So Board Game Geek is the internet's premier website for tracking board games. They hold a convention annually every year, which is basically just people gather and either bring their own board games or check out games from the convention's massive library and just play board games for 5 days straight. It's a very straightforward convention. I mean, it's pretty.
Hopefully they've remembered to bathe this time.
I'd say the clientele tends to be the more responsible kind. So, there definitely was not the odor issue that some cons have. Yeah, that was definitely. And the main thing is, though, is that it is a 5-day con, which is unusual because, and also it doesn't have like the usual kind of tableau events that most large conventions would have, where you'd have a bunch of sub rooms with panels and things like that. There is usually a big exhibitor and industry presence normally, so you'll have maybe some game demonstrations and such. But not much else than that. It's really just people there to play games. And that's what they just do 24/7 for all 5 of those days. It's in a great location. They hold it at this year they held it at the Hyatt Regency Reunion, which is a very nice hotel in downtown Dallas, connected to the Reunion Tower, that the ball on top of the shaft.
Were there any games being played in the tower?
No, some people went up there, of course. I mean, it's connected to the hotel/convention center. So some people, of course, indulged while they were here. But other than that, they were again just heading into the main rooms and playing games. The only thing that was really noticeable, though, is like I said, there is a pretty significant industry presence. But this year, in contrast to the other conventions we've talked about last few podcasts, where the dealers' rooms were pretty healthy, a lot of people are showing up. Their dealer's room was down to, usually they have over 100 different booths there from different companies. They're down to maybe a dozen. But most of the usual companies that would show up, well, I mean, a lot of them sponsored, a lot of them sent official material, even provided a little bit of assistance in exchange for sponsor. It's basically providing a little bit of cash for a couple of blurbs and the paperwork and everything. But almost nobody actually showed. So it's kind of weird. So their dealer's room, their dealer's room got turned into extra play space. So finding a table was no problem. But yeah, that's something that's very noticeable. Partially it's just because it is a industry space. So it's, instead of being like retailers, so of course retailers are always going to take every opportunity to get in front of some customers, try to sell some product. These are the actual manufacturers and the designers. So for them, it's not really a cash opportunity, it's a marketing opportunity. And right now, most of them are still under general COVID rules. Because with business insurance policies, most of them are still playing it safe. So for them, just trying to justify infringing that for a marketing opportunity just didn't make sense. So for them, the vast majority of people just stayed home. Though attendee wise, there's tons of people. There's thousands and thousands of people there to play games. So the actual attendees came out in force as usual. But yeah, their dealer's room was just ghost town.
So the bad was the fact that the makers didn't show up this time.
Yeah, for them, effectively, the pandemic is still going. Therefore, they are not on the convention circuit with very few exceptions. Like I think Gen Con probably had a fairly decent dealer's room as far as the industry presence. But other than that, most other conventions I've heard from said the same thing. And some people even said that the PAX recently had a much smaller dealer's room and an industry room than they've had ever. Kind of same problem. Just again, when actual producing companies get involved, they're not thinking about things in terms of retail and getting in front of customers. For them, it's just one of many marketing projects that are on hold because of the pandemic. So they just don't do much, if anything.
So what were your overall thoughts?
Well, and that's the thing. Even if you did have a good dealer's room, which for some people some people I've been told actually will come to it just for the dealer's room usually. But other than that, it is a one-trick pony con. I mean, if you don't enjoy playing new board games, and also don't enjoy playing them constantly, for all day long for several days on end, this con's going to be hell for you. I had a good time, but mostly just because I went with some family and friends. We really just been wanting to get a chance to meet up, maybe play some games anyway. We would have like a pre-scheduled list of just games we wanted to try. Like I'd been wanting to play Scythe for a really long time because I just love the art on it and I just keep hearing good things. Also played Orleans. Was the Anno 1800 board game, which actually turns out to be pretty interesting in its own right versus the computer game. But I was only there for a couple of days. I didn't do the full 5-day run either. I couldn't do that. So if that's the case with anybody listening, if you're not that into board games, maybe show up just for one day just to check out the dealer's room. Hopefully next year you'll be back up to speed. But other than that, it's not going to be your thing.
With some giveaways and panels, right?
Oh, that's another thing too, though. They're also very swag intensive. I actually got several games, like full boxes, just handed to me when I went to pick up my badge. Like, okay, here's your badge. Fill out your paperwork here, and pile of boxes of games. These are yours now. Like, wow.
It was basically, here's your badge. Now here's your boxes. If you want a cart, that's going to cost you another $30.
Yeah, they probably would have been a way for them to make some extra revenue. Just be like, yeah, now do you want a way to carry those around? But seriously, it goes back to that whole industry backing thing, which while that's kind of killing their room this year, that also means that, yeah, they can get some major swag. That they know everybody in the industry who makes the designs of board games. So it's not that hard. In fact, I think they've even published a few themselves. I think the website's actually even kind of helped, at least assisted in the publishing and distribution of a lot of games. So it's not that hard for them just to get a huge allotment of some games out there and give them out as swag and as ongoing door prizes all weekend. So
overall, you recommend?
Yeah, just if board gaming is your thing, you'll have fun. If it's not, you probably want to steer clear. Because it is a one-trick pony con. So if it's your trick, you're great. If not, steer clear. Let the other people go enjoy their thing. You should be doing something else.
Yes. As we transition to something else, let's talk about Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Yes.
Did you actually have time to see it?
Yeah, actually, after finishing up the game of Orleans, dropped off some family members and head straight for the theater. And definitely worth it. Very good movie. Really finally, yeah, there we go. Really finally getting that Ghostbusters 3 we've always wanted. And we have it.
Overall, I saw the movie twice just to make sure my feelings were correct about it. And I feel that I got it correctly both times. Overall, what I really enjoyed about this movie was legacy.
Yes.
That's something that you don't see a lot in movies that are remakes or some sort of reimagining. There is no gravitas a lot of times because it's just for a lot of movies and properties, people just treat it like a paycheck. It'll make money because it's a golden goose.
Right.
With Ghostbusters, they actually put love into it. Ghostbusters Afterlife was a tribute. And also, I felt that the pacing of the movie, some people don't like it. I actually thought it was necessary because they were trying to introduce new characters and put this feeling back of what an 80s movie felt like.
Yes.
That was one thing that I really liked, was the fact that it felt like an 80s movie.
And plus, I don't know why people complain so much about pacing. It's not a very long movie. It's barely over 2 hours.
Yeah. It's not like it's 3 hours or On Her Majesty's Secret Service long, which is 140 minutes. But it basically, it got everything right that it needed to get right.
Yes, I agree with that.
And the effects for the cost of the movie were good. $70 million, and this is what they got. I think they did well for 70 million. Your
Well,
thoughts?
plus I've heard a lot of the with the okay, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. If you're listening and you haven't seen the movie, go watch it, come back. Okay, so the gatekeeper and the keymaster reappear, the demon dogs. And from what I was seeing about it, looks like they actually use a lot of, while there was a lot of CG involving them, there's also a lot of practical effects.
The Walmart scene in particular.
Yeah, so that was actually pretty. That's a way of kind of keeping the budget in line and also getting some very good shots just by some well done practical effects.
Yeah.
And also just to kind of what you said there about like the legacy, that's what is so many of these reboots get wrong. Just not only because of lack of respect, just the overall lack of respect, seeing it as a paycheck. I mean, obviously here it was very different. I mean, this is Jason Reitman and Ivan Reitman even coming in a little bit. People who are this franchise is part of their family legacy, just as them as directors and producers. So, but in most cases with a lot of these reboots, they actively destroy the legacy of their characters.
Yeah.
Especially in Star
Skywalker.
Wars. Exactly. That's gonna be the most prominent one: the destruction of Luke Skywalker as this heroic figure to millions of people. Here's the exact
Why?
opposite. Yeah, and here's the exact
Does
opposite.
it make you an extra buck? No.
Quite the opposite, as Disney's found out the hard way. And here, Egon. The whole question is why is Egon gone rogue? And the movie explores that. Instead of trying to tear Egon down, it explores his mistakes, it explores why he did it, and helps us understand who he is. And in the end, it helps both the members of his family forgive him, and us as fans understand him. And they give him a great send off at the end, which you see why the movie is very much. In fact, it's actually dedicated to Harold Ramis. Yeah. And they really go out of their way to give this character. In fact, it's really amazing how well they did, as far as, since they only had the limited footage from when he was alive, how ably they were able to integrate it. Especially when they towards the end, when
it was
they
deep
kind of
fake.
And very well done deep fake, and also very strategically done. They knew not to push it.
Well, he doesn't talk.
Yeah, exactly. That's something. There's like, we'll make it work, and they made it work, even with especially such subtle things like the lamp scene when Phoebe, his granddaughter, has found his lab, and she's like working on a proton pack, and she's like, oh wow, how'd you make a positron collider or some device like that so small? How'd you do that? And the lamp, which has been kind of being either manipulated by Egon's ghost or is possessed by him, it just turns towards the wall to show all these diplomas, and she's like, oh,
you're smart.
And it's subtle, and it's a simple effect. They could easily duplicate that, and it communicates so much.
Yeah.
And there you go. We didn't need to give him a voice, and we didn't have to pay for expensive CG. Boom. It's just good writing.
Yeah.
It's
And
smart writing.
Also, at no time did there were characters who were upset with Egon for what he did.
Yes. And for good reason.
Yeah. Well,
creates the conflict at the center of the movie.
Yeah. But he was trying to do what he thought was right. And in the end, his plan worked. It had to go through phase 4.
That's the thing. So they can reveal the character's flaws. The character can make mistakes, but they can still help, help the viewer understand him. They can redeem the character in the viewer's eyes and leave an intact legacy to pass on to the next wave of characters. Because obviously that's what they want to do with this movie, is actually make that pass on to a future franchise, to more installments using these characters or others. And that's how you do it. You don't destroy the old characters to create an artificial springboard for your new, better ones. No, this is a good handoff. They explored the old characters and use that exploration to hand off in a much more organic and believable fashion to the new ones. So yeah,
also, I have to
Yeah.
give credit to the actress, the young actress who played Phoebe. She got down Harold Ramis's ticks for how he played Egon.
Oh, McKenna Grace. Yes.
Yeah.
She did a fantastic job as Phoebe. Yes.
And also,
Yeah.
I love the fact that Phoebe always kind of felt outside her family without realizing she was part of the family.
Much like Egon probably felt.
Yeah.
Yes. Very much
Because,
her grandfather's daughter, basically, is what they were really
yeah.
successfully did there. Which is interesting too, because with the cast of characters, the the new ghost, but the collection of children who are kind of Phoebe and her friend and her brother and the friends they make in this town, who is to become the new Ghostbusters. There is such a good match to the original Ghostbusters when you start actually looking at them, because Phoebe obviously is taking Egon's slot. Her brother actually takes Winston's slot, as in he's the person is basically a good person, doesn't really know what he's doing, but he kind of comes into the situation. Just as Winston just came in for a paycheck, Trevor just comes in because he just wants to drive a car, because it's one thing he knows. He's trying to get with a girl, blah, blah, blah. Very simple motivations, but when placed in the situation, the fact that he is a good person causes him to kind of grow and apply himself to it.
Yeah.
Phoebe's friend podcast.
Yeah, they never gave him a name.
He actually gave. They said just call me podcast, but main
No,
thing
no,
is,
I mean, he did give his legal name.
but spiritually though, he's Ray.
Yes.
Yes, the enthusiasm, and he'd even have him have that conversation with Ray at the end when the originals show up.
He even gets covered in goo like Ray.
Right, and got a little weak with Lucky, Trevor's love interest, just because she didn't get that. And to be honest, I don't blame the actress, because she just didn't get quite that much screen time. They didn't put enough into the script for her to play the role, but they're clearly trying to move her into the Venkman position.
Yeah, she has that kind of sardonic wit.
Exactly. And when she had those lines, she was pretty good at it, actually. So that's one thing where I think they did make a mistake, that they didn't give her quite enough to allow her to fill the slot. Definitely not the actress's fault. I think that's just the writers trying to keep the film lean. They probably should have given her a few more lines to let her do her thing.
Well, they established the character.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all you can do.
And of course, the original show up. They
Who are
don't
still with us.
Yes, exactly. And those definitely showing their age, though. Though what is interesting, though, is where
Ernie Hudson looked good.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because that's also where they're going with him. Because while Ray and Venkman are very much who they've always been, you can kind of see how they're kind of on the way out.
Yeah.
But Hudson and this new cast of characters is going to be eventually kind of stepping into their place. But Winston, is definitely kind of get the feeling that he's going to be staying around as a key character, kind of supporting this growth of a new Ghostbusters. You saw the after credit scenes, right?
Yes. If you haven't seen the movie yet, please stay through the credits.
Yes, there are two. There's a mid credits one, and then at the very end, after all the credits, is a very important one, because it's them basically setting up the next
sequels.
Yeah, the mid credits one is funny. It's a good laugh, and then that's where Sigourney Weaver actually shows up, because she was in the credits, and everyone's like, "Wait, where's Sigourney Weaver?" And then it's really just because she's just on that mid credit scene.
Yes, they had her show up one day over lunch.
Yeah, I'm sure that scene was done in an afternoon, but it's still a funny scene,
Yes.
But but it's that final after credit scene that's the really important one, because that's clearly where they're trying to set up the next movies.
Okay.
Yes.
What would you have cut, or what did you feel didn't work?
Well, so yeah, because basically we're going into the bad stuff here. So the one thing I will criticize a little bit is that to do this movie, they decided to go back to the well, which wasn't necessarily a bad idea in general, but one thing that there was a little, they literally went and took back the exact same basic plot line. It's Gozer, it's the gatekeeper, it's the keymaster. They basically
Gozer does show up.
Exactly. And it's that whole plot again, which in the end, they made it work. it was still a good movie, and it was a good way to get us back where we wanted to be. Because sometimes we need the nostalgia, sometimes we kind of need to see the same, but that can be kind of dangerous sometimes. So
Yes.
the long-term legacy of this movie, that will get hurt a little bit, because right now we really just needed that shot of something that was undeniably the Ghostbusters we craved. But years from now, it's going to look repetitive.
Well,
Uh,
to be fair, Ivo Sandor basically kind of is the kind of individual who would have a backup plan if plan A didn't work.
yes, I do like the fact that they kind of put together the fact that this is the mine where the selenium came from to make the girders and the
No one would
skyscraper for this
design a
movie.
building like that.
And it kind of works because, yeah, industrialists did that back
Yeah.
in the early 1900s. They would create communities just from scratch for big industrial projects like that.
Yes,
So
it makes sense.
it can make it make sense, but in the end, it's still the same enemy doing the same thing. Um, yeah, again, it works for us now because we needed some more of the same with a little bit of new, spiced on there. But in the long run, it's going to be a little repetitive.
Yeah.
That's the
Mind
thing.
you, my little problem was the overuse of at the mid part of the movie of the mini Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yeah, and some people have kind of, because obviously the original Stay Puft was a figure of terror. I mean, he
Yeah.
was just taking apart New York City, and now it's just they're comic relief who briefly become an impediment that needs to be overcome by a podcast, at the end of the movie. But and they're just so weird.
Well, actually, what they are familiars of Gozer.
Right.
They're remnants of, because of Ray's decision to make the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. He Gozer gained the ability to influence Stay Puft marshmallows. So basically, if you saw a Stay Puft Marshmallow, a mini Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, it
Yeah.
basically meant one of the either the keymaster or the gatekeeper were nearby.
Yes. Well, and I think also they've been trying to appeal to children because it's just a cute
It
little
was
figure.
basically an
Yeah.
attempt to make gremlins.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
I like that it actually makes sense from a demonology kind of context.
But actually, speaking of Evo Shandor, they really underuse. I have to wonder if there's going to be some deleted scenes when we finally get the home copy that are going to feature him more, because he makes that spoiler. Basically, Shandor has preserved himself in a coffin inside this mine, and he's resurrected when Gozer returns, and he gets one line, and then she just literally tears him in half.
Well, one
And
thing you never do to some sort of higher being, you don't go up to it and propose marriage.
well, and it's just the fact that they basically brought in J.K. Simmons to portray him, and it's just for him to do one line, and then maybe
Yes.
one. Yeah, it's like, wow, Ivo Shandor has been referenced so many times in the two movies,
And in the video game.
which to the extent that I even am surprised that since they went to the trouble to actually have an actor there portraying him, why don't we have any flashback scenes to showing him when he was alive to help illustrate the creation of the temple and what he was doing to help flesh out the character.
Well, it probably would have overwhelmed the movie, and it would have probably been kind of like Postal 2. Not Postal 2, Portal 2. Sorry.
Well, I mean, the movie is pretty short. I mean, they had
Yeah.
room to put it in, and a few minutes of that could have really kind of fleshed things out a bit. It also would have made his appearance make more sense, because right now he just goes like, "Oh, please rule beside me." It's like he actually thought he could. I mean, we kind of assumed that he was a cultist, maybe saw himself as a high priest, but apparently assumed that he hoped that Gozer would make him immortal and allow him to rule the world next to him slash her. Yeah, that's not what people would have expected him to assume he would be getting out of this. So that too could have been easily introduced just when they, going through Egon's books and paperwork at the house, they could have found some documentation Egon found. Maybe
Well,
Shandor's personal journal or something.
yes, it
Um,
would have probably been the writings of a lunatic.
well, and then Q flashback basically been with Egon's notes on, and just Q flashback to Evo Shandor setting up the mine, the town, the rituals of the miners returning and throwing themselves into the well, and all that stuff.
Mummifying himself.
And also expanding his, again, explaining that motivation up front, that he actually thought that this wasn't just he wasn't just a random high priest trying to, he actually thought that Gozer was going to make him ruler of the world.
Is the equal.
Yeah, exactly. Or, but more importantly, not destroying the world, which is what Gozer really wants to do. So Evo didn't even really understand what he was getting himself into.
Never make deals with demons.
Yeah, so that would have been cool for them to expand, but they did not, because apparently they were really committed to that lean running time.
Yeah,
So,
well,
we'll have to wait and see. I would not be surprised if there's a lot of deleted scenes once we
there
actually
probably are.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
more with some of the old Ghostbusters. Them going to the airport on Winston's plane or something.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Gosh, Aykroyd and and Bill Murray, they have Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray both aged quite. That's the thing. The fact that they actually show them as having aged so much, because with Hollywood makeup artists, they could easily conceal quite a bit of that, and they chose not to. They may have even enhanced it a little bit, to be honest. Except Ernie Hudson again. Ernie Hudson looking great. Go Ernie.
Well, he's
Whatever you're
doing
doing,
better
man,
than
keep
he
doing
was
it.
in the 2016 movie.
Yeah. And
Let us
that,
not go too far into that.
well, and that is something that has to be brought up. Looking at the Rotten Tomato ratings now, we have that gap where we have the official reviewers are down in the 60s, and and over the last couple of days, it's even kind of edged down, dropping 1 percentage point at a time, while the audience have gone straight to 90 plus. It's even been edging up. So
Yeah.
you have this big, huge gap between the audience and the official reviewers, and it's ridiculous in some cases, because one thing I started doing is I started reading some of the reviews that were negative, and then pulling up that reviewer, going back through their list of reviews and seeing how they reviewed the 2016 version.
Yes.
And yeah, it's that you see a definite pattern here where all these reviewers who are just singing the praises of the absolutely awful, objectively awful and terrible movie that was released in 2016 are just so harsh and critical of this one, and it just destroys any credibility. Because if you were hard on both, I could see it. I could say, okay, maybe you're hard to please, and again, Afterlife's not a perfect movie; it's got its flaws. But trying to claim that the 2016 Abomination as giving it a high rating, and then coming down so hard on this one, a movie which clearly just got the franchise so much better. Yeah, that just destroys credibility, and it's just sad because a lot of the industry, really, a lot of these reviewers are just trying to lash out at this movie because it just proves, this is how you do it right to make a Ghostbusters movie, not perfect but right, versus how to do it wrong, which is the 2016 project.
So overall,
Yeah,
do you recommend it?
definitely. And in fact, I'm going to go a little bit further. I would actually rank this. So it's not only do I think does it make the Ghostbuster trilogy, so we have a proper Ghostbuster trilogy now. I would rate it as being the second best one. I would put this one above 2. The first is obviously still the best, but this one is better than Ghostbusters 2. I think it's a more compelling story.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah. So definitely a must see. And
If you could
hey,
make it to a theater, do so.
oh yeah. And hey, we've got a lot of movies that are getting some more follow-ups, like the Matrix series, the new Matrix movie coming out soon. So it's good to see at least the first ones to come up of this latest batch of reboots actually was good. So that's one down. Hopefully, maybe the Matrix reboot will be as good, or at least get as much of the original Matrix feeling and concept and ideas down.
Let's go on then, since we've
Yeah.
already established we both enjoyed Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Yes, definitely 4 thumbs up here.
Okie doke. So our next topic this week in Orlando was the IAAPA convention, which deals with amusement park and other things that are needed for amusement parks, such as costumes, parade floats, uniforms, all that sorts of thing. And of course, there were rides that showed up.
Yes.
But the first one we're going to deal with is
And I should interject. Unfortunately, this is not an actual on-site con report like we've been doing before. We did not actually get to go there ourselves.
that would have
Hopefully,
required more money.
yes. Hopefully, in the future, we'll get to pull that off, and we'll hopefully bring back some media and some more insights. But we pick up what we can from the news reports. So especially credit for this was in large part goes to Ace.
Yes.
American Coaster enthusiasts collected lots of news and information and media for everyone else to see and enjoy. So great, thank you, Ace. And
yes, the first new ride they had that really blew people away was at Fun Spot America at Atlanta. For those of you who don't know what Fun Spot is in general, they're theme parks that are usually by the Disney in Kissimmee and at Orlando next to Universal. They kind of thrive on people leaving both of those parks to just see, oh, what's that over there?
So they're the overflow chain.
Yes.
Picking up the scraps from the bigger predators.
Basically.
The remoras of the theme park industry.
Basically. And
okay.
They announced a brand new roller coaster by RMC.
Airy Force One.
And it's airy, not airy. This is footage from Ace. I thought I had this queued up correctly. Basically, the Airy family is the ones who own Fun Spot.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about this RMC hybrid is it's technically not really a hybrid. That's not wood.
But
It's
uses
gonna be
uses the iBox track though,
Yeah.
I guess. Okay.
So it's fully steel with iBox.
Cool.
And it's technically, I think, bigger than the actual facilities they currently have at the Atlanta park.
Okay. And so of course obvious pun on Air Force One there. So red, white, and blue
Yes.
coloring, very patriotic. And then okay.
Well, the man who founded Fun Spot apparently had a love affair for Air Force and space. If you go to the Orlando park, they have one of their main coasters is a Vekoma SLC called Freedom Flyer, which
Okay.
it's basically a play on a superhero who's very patriotic.
Yeah, and this logo we're looking at strongly resembles the current Air Force insignia with the upswept ribbon wings at the end there. Yeah.
It looks like a really good ride. And also it's going to be in Atlanta. So that means that Atlanta will have two major RMC coasters. One at Six Flags Over Georgia with the Twisted Cyclone. And now Airy Force One at Fun Spot America, Atlanta. So
nice. So and also with this is a pretty big step up for them.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't think they have any of the rides there. I mean, I barely
At
even heard of the
park.
chain. I barely even heard of the chain that much. So this has to be a big deal.
Yeah, for each of the parks in Orlando, basically have a wooden coaster of some sort. So at the Orlando specific park, that's White Lightning, and at Kissimmee, it's Mind Blower. White Lightning was built by GCI, and Mind Blower was built by Gravity Group. And I've ridden both.
Cool.
Yeah. So an interesting one is this, the Cloud Coaster.
This was also announced?
Yeah, but it
Okay.
wasn't physically going to be, they haven't announced anyone who's building one yet.
Oh, so it's a concept they were unveiled.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can actually, interestingly, it can be overhead. And one of the interesting concepts they showed was this. You can have a little surfboard. This is going to be a milder ride, but it's an interesting concept of what you can do.
That is gonna, I mean, something that small, you can only have like one, maybe two people on there. That's gonna be a huge line. That's not gonna move people through very quickly.
Well, depending on the block zone. For those of you who do not know, a block zone is where you can basically park a train without it getting hurt.
Basically, how much distance you be put between each individual train in order to
Exactly.
run them safely. Yes. But yeah, this is, I mean, it looks kind of fun, but yeah, I think the biggest problem with that is that it's kind of a very low occupancy per car, per car,
Yeah.
and no real train. It's individual cars. So I think if I were a park operator, I'd be like, this looks nice, but it's going to have long lines.
It's probably going to end up being kiddie coasters
Mhm.
or something that has a lot of block zones, which is
Mhm.
possible. Rock and Rippin' roller coaster at Universal Studios Florida has about 6 block zones for that very reason.
Okay. Okay. Let's see what else
And
got
now
announced.
one a little
Here
bit
we go.
closer to home. We
Yes.
actually
Yes.
kind of heard about this at Winterfest last January in Six Flags Over Texas. Basically, Coda
Well,
Land.
to clarify, we heard veiled allusions in a presentation from the Coda Land representative. They didn't actually tip us off to exactly what they were doing because there was,
Yes.
they want to get them in trouble. They definitely did not tell us any details like this. So they just want to make that clear.
Basically, Coda Land is in Orlando, and they're going to build a Gerstlauer, and it's a shuttle infinity
Well,
coaster.
this is in Austin.
Yes.
It's Coda Land USA. So yes.
Yes. CODA stands for Circuit of the Americas. And basically, this is their first major ride. And basically, it's a typical Gerstlauer train, 4x3. And it's got a couple of, it's got basically some spikes, and it's got basically
Well,
a large
lots of inversions, shuttle
yes.
coaster. So you're going to be going out and taking the same track back in. Now, that crossing over the road right there, that's the part that people were kind of going crazy about. I noticed on
Yes.
Facebook when I saw some mentions of it. Because I know, like, for example, up at Cedar Park, you've got Gatekeeper, which is a roller coaster that actually has two of its main supports make up the gate into the park. So you're going over people coming into the gate when you ride the ride, which is kind of cool. But in this case, going over an in-use road, I think some people did say that, especially if like you're inverting over it, if something falls out of your pocket, it's going to smack into somebody's car below you.
Which they've said they're going to have some sort of keeping device so that your stuff doesn't just fall out.
Yeah,
But
that part could get a little weird, just saying. So I wouldn't be shocked if something was added there, or if they even end up changing that particular element.
yes,
We'll have to wait and
but
see.
at least this shows that Coda Land is actually going to attempt to try and play with the big boys. And it's
Well,
also making Texas a much higher destination for theme parks now
yes, because
after the loss of beloved park in Houston. It means we will have once again a lot more attractions for people to come to Texas for.
and that park for newbies who may not be familiar with.
Well, I don't want to get, this basically turned into a Travis Scott video, but Astroworld, which was
Yes,
owned by Six Flags at the time.
yes. Used to be the Six Flags triad here in the state of Texas. Astroworld, Six Flags Over Texas, and then later Fiesta Texas. But
Yes.
they
And
foolishly
of
sold off
course,
Astroworld.
no, they shouldn't have, but there's not much you can do at this point. It's a parking lot.
But well, now we're kind of back to that. Oh, I'm going to say 2.5 because well, this is a big step forward for Codaland. Um, it's because I also got that wild mouse from that park in the UK as well. I think they announced that as well. So that's two that they've grabbed.
Ah,
This is their biggest one in their and definitely I would say definitely the first major
well,
one.
unique.
Yeah, and the one they got from I believe it's a wild mouse is what they got
They got a
from that.
wild mouse.
Yeah,
Well,
so it's
you been
that's
on a wild mouse yet?
I don't think I have actually. So that'd be cool. But
Okay.
the only concern is that's two proper coasters and a couple of flat rides is what they've got right now. Which, hey, that's not bad. And
Well,
if you know,
for
I
a
think that,
park that's starting out, it's not bad, especially with a unique coaster. Hopefully,
well,
Austin regulars will support it.
well, and I think they also are just trying to get their logistics in line because to have
Yeah.
a coaster like this and even that Wild Mouse, you need mechanical crews on site. And if you, by the time you get to a really big ride with really constant mechanical attention needs, if you try to go straight to that, that can be really difficult. As opposed to if you kind of like leverage up like they're doing now, where they got the Wild Mouse being put together. This one's going to be coming in next year. I think it's next year, isn't it? They said it was supposed to be
Yes, late
running.
2022.
Yeah. So
So,
that gets them time to start hiring mechanics, bringing in engineers, training staff to operate the rides correctly. So when it comes time to start adding more unique rides, they already have a foundation in place to train new personnel. They already have a set of referral references from their existing engineers. Say here's who else you can hire to help keep these things running. So yeah, I think they're just kind of edging up, building up that the behind the scenes logistics to become a major park at some point.
yes. So, overall, IAPA was interesting this year from the tidbits we got.
And also,
And
I think they were showing off the cars from the Axis Coaster prototype that they've been.
yes, they did.
Because who is that? That is that Gerstlauer or who's doing Axis Coaster? That
That would be
is
SNS,
SNS. That's right.
which is owned also by Sensei. The new,
Yes.
let me see if I can cue that up. For those of you who don't know, SNS is part of the Sensei Group, which is a Japanese conglomerate. They also own Vekoma. Okie doke. And some people have this real desire to see Vekoma come back to the US with some of their new stuff like the Blitz Coaster. I'm kind of like, wouldn't it have to go through SNS? I don't know. But
Yeah, because it seems like that when they bought Vekoma, Vekoma just really kind of downshifted. Like they didn't do much new in the way of new ideas there for a while. They were just kind of mass producing some of their old flat ride ideas and basically like SNS. They bought Vekoma for the existing business and markets, but SNS was the actual primary developmental asset making new and interesting
but in the
stuff.
last couple of years, Vekoma has been building these new coasters in Europe and in China, which have
Yeah.
been pretty amazing. But at the same time, the one that I'm really looking forward to is this Access coaster. And if
Yeah.
the Disney
I'm just kind of wondering though
Imagineers,
what their plan is if they really plan to have to keep the two. I mean, I got the impression again that they were probably thinking at some point they were going to merge Vekoma over, but then suddenly someone decided we're going to revive Vekoma, actually have it start developing again, and let it function as a separate entity. Which I don't know. Kind of wondering what exactly motivated that change of plan
who
there.
knows?
Yeah.
But I'm actually more excited about this Access coaster because just think about it. If Disney had, you know, another coaster idea, and I'm perfectly willing to let them take it, run with it, and do something with it. But just imagine a pod racing coaster with this.
That could be pretty awesome.
Yes, a race, you could have them dueling. It would be brilliant. It would bring people, put them in the seats. Access coasters don't have to be super intense, but they can make it look so much more intense than it actually is for the public, and people would love it. That's what's, baffling to me about this, because Vekoma is the preferred company that Disney works with. For instance, they're the ones who built Space Mountain at Disneyland Paris. They're the ones who built the Expedition Everest coaster, and they're also the ones who are building the Tron coaster. Disney has also worked with Mack recently. They built the Toy Story Slinky Dog coaster with Mack. And honestly, just looking at this, you could make a perfect pod racing coaster. And it would be
right.
It would be so, ridiculous not to just think about it.
Especially if you did it as a dark ride. I mean, and really like just immerse people behind screens. I mean, it could be crazy trying to like create a corridor for this thing to maneuver in and orient in and all that with that many screens. It'd be quite the challenge, but gosh, it'd be an amazing experience.
It can be done. At Universal, they have the Mummy ride. And also they have the Gringotts, Harry Potter Gringotts ride, which is a roller coaster dark ride. So you could literally do a pod racing hybrid dark ride roller coaster with pod racing. And there is actually room in the design for the add-on that is Galaxy's Edge for something. It was originally designed with an outer bank for some sort of animal ride, but they didn't do that. So again, Disney really needs to think about making a pod racing coaster with animatronics and other fun stuff.
Soon as they get some money, I'm sure they'll do something. But suffice to say, right now they are strapped.
Oh, I know. And to be fair to them, you really should not have made a Home Alone movie. Why did you guys do that? Oh well, let's get on to the passing of Robert Thurston.
Yes, which we missed this one, unfortunately. He actually passed away on October 20th.
Most people missed it.
Yeah. Which wasn't just terribly shocking. He was actually 80 years old when he passed. Which also means that, I mean, we know him primarily from the books he wrote for BattleTech, which means when he actually got commissioned by FASA to write those books, he was already, in his 40s. He was already an old hand at this. He wrote Battlestar Galactica in
7 books.
Yeah, back in the day. So BattleTech getting him was actually a really big deal because they were actually bringing in somebody who frankly knew what they were doing.
The first BattleTech book, which was Sword and Dagger, is kind of a lost book at this point. No one re-releases it, and if you actually have a copy, it can go for a lot of money. Mainly, the primary stories were the first BattleTech books were basically the Grey Death Legion trilogy and the Warrior trilogy.
Right.
Warrior trilogy was done by Michael Stackpole. Michael Stackpole is a great writer.
Yes.
But he's better in the macro sense.
Right. Thurston was much better at writing individual characters and making individual characters compelling.
Yeah.
I was actually reading in his obituary, and they actually even talked about that. He wasn't really interested in quote, he wasn't interested in spaceships and time warps, but people and intellect and feelings of failure, power, and love.
And that is his writing style. Honestly the story of Aiden Pride.
Yeah, Aiden Pride. Yes. So basically, for those not that familiar with him, the work that he's best known for, Thurston, was the Jade Phoenix trilogy, in which at this point FASA had just introduced a new faction to the game called the Clans that massively changed the BattleTech universe. And while Stackpole had written some novels kind of explaining their goals and with had a lot of clan leaders discussing who they were and
The
what
Blood
their
of
intentions
Kerensky
were.
trilogy.
Yes. With this trilogy, Thurston actually explored the life of a clan mech warrior who from his birth, his raising in one of their Sibcos, to becoming a warrior, to losing that status, to regaining it, his career, and eventually becoming a hero to the clan. His whole life is covered in these 3 books.
Even
And
though he was a pariah for most of his life.
well, and beyond the legacy of the individual character in Pride, just these books just explored clan society. I mean, you actually, what is the life of a clanner? Here we go. This is how they grow up. This is what they do. This is what happens to them. This is how they feel about things. This is how they interact with each other. It just completely changed the perception of the clans to the play, because especially when they were introduced, people were pretty committed to their existing factions in the Battletech universe. You know, people were all for about the Kaplan Confederation. They're all about the Federated Sons. They're all about these existing factions that have been around. And when the clans first started showing up, people were like, "Oh, this is interesting," but they were an enemy of their existing factions. People didn't think about them this much. After these books came out, people became pro-clan.
Well, some of them did. I just
Yeah,
enjoyed 80 and Pride and realized
it's just Aiden,
to be
Aiden Pride, Aiden. That's all it is.
okay, Aiden. To be fair, being a clanner stinks.
Well, it is a harsh life, and we know that now because thanks to Robert Thurston actually giving us an example of it. But that's the
Well,
thing.
even in Stackpole, you saw that, oh, you're over a certain age in most clans. Go get in the old folks unit. But
That's
I'm only
Lomas. Yes.
32.
Well, and again, the important thing is the reason we're talking about Thurston was with this trilogy. He took this new faction, this major, probably one of the biggest redefining events that's affected the Battletech franchise, and he locked it in. With this trilogy, he actually helped the players understand who this new faction was and how to understand them, and just how to play as them and actually be interested in them.
Yes.
And their perspective on the galaxy.
But the interesting thing is that he took a character who basically failed. His whole life was destroyed. But through some actions, Aiden was able to rise up, even though everything was against him at that point. And he was able to get the things he desired. And at the same time, he kind of realized his society wasn't that great, but he fought for it anyway.
Well, I don't know about necessarily that. I mean, because he'd been abandoned by I don't know if he thought his study wasn't that great. He just resented being abandoned by it. But above that, because that's the thing, he didn't reject his society. Quite the opposite. No. He did everything to regain his status as a warrior. Because from what they taught him from the day he was born, that was his one true destiny. I think the only thing he could accept.
But he did kind of carry with him some manuscripts from Terra, which is what in BattleTech they refer Earth to. So he saw the difference in stuff, and he had philosophical thoughts, which a lot of warriors tend to kind of be, I am warrior. Do you accept my bachal? What are you talking about? What is a bachal? You reject honorable combat? Honorable what?
Well, and this is what brings us back to what they're saying, in his obituary, that his writing was about, wasn't about the spaceships and the time warp. It's not about the bachals and the mechs necessarily.
It's about the character.
It's about the people. It's about the intellect. Hence why he wanted to have his character explore different ideas through the secret cache of books, and the feelings of failure, power, and love. And that is, Aiden Pride's story is failure, the regaining of power, and then finally a sacrifice due to love of daughter and love of clan.
Yeah.
And you can see how that the philosophy again just sold the character, sold the entire clanner idea of who these people are to the fan base.
Even though technically the Jade Falcons are not really like Aiden.
Well, each clan is different, and also each clan has its people. But anyway, but that's an important thing. That's why Thurston's important, and he wrote some other books as well afterwards, kind of coming back to some of his characters and kind of exploring their actions as the plot line moved on. Though admittedly, nothing really as important as the Jade Phoenix trilogy. I don't think he was even shooting to do that.
No,
Uh,
I don't think so either.
yeah.
To be fair to him, I thought I Am Jade Falcon was kind of like, here's some scraps from Bread for War, do something with them. And to be fair, I never really liked Joanna.
So Joanna is an interesting because he even explores the fact. It's one of the things that it's probably the most observations, which again comes to how he came down to explore the concept of the clans. He makes the comment in the third book of the trilogy where he's comparing, basically it's the entire Falcon Guards, this clan unit is advancing towards its next target. So you've got mechs tromping along, you've got elementals jetting around between the mechs, fighters flying overhead. And first it has Aiden with his thoughts, where he's thinking very large conceptual thoughts, like what is the meaning of this? Concerns about the overall spirit of the clan, is the concerns about who he's discovered is who he later discovers is his daughter, things like that. And then it switches over to Joanna, who is just purely thinking as a warrior of like, okay, status of my mech, how close to next target, blah blah blah. And even comments,
and I kill.
And even comments, she's actually the absolute epitome of what what the clan warrior is supposed to be, because she doesn't think of anything else except for carrying out her immediate mission. That she is the perfect genetically created human weapon. And it's really
what
Aiden. Well, Aiden is not, because he does see the bigger goal. I mean, technically speaking, Aiden should have accepted his failure and just gone off and become a mechanic in a lower or another lower caste. But he didn't.
Clan society is based on 5 different caste systems,
right? Yeah. So basically, that's the
warriors on top.
I mean, it's a weird little comment, but it's really insightful. It's like, oh, by the way, this hero I spent 3 books writing about, who's supposed to be this paragon of the clans to the fan base, technically actually isn't the greatest epitome of a clan warrior. It's actually this other side character, by the way.
Really is. Which is why I Am Jade Falcon is basically Joanna's I Am Jade Falcon. She is literally what the Jade Falcons want to be like.
Well, and that's also why I think he lobbied a little bit for the final outcome with Joanna. Probably the most important thing she does after the trilogy is one of the most established and famous characters in the Battletech timeline was Natasha Karinsky.
Yes.
And Joanna, and she's very flamboyant and a very kind of loud and present character in the series, much like Aiden, actually. And Joanna kills her. just a limited. She's a very popular and favorite character, and Joanna takes her out. Yes. And it's not even a huge noble final battle. It's just Joanna doing her job, carrying out her role.
Kind of elderly women fighting on top of a mech, hitting each other with metal bars, as I recall.
Well, no. They're in their mechs.
No, at the end.
No. Joanna kills Natasha because Natasha actually is winning. Severely damaged Joanna's mech, and when she closes in, they're talking over the radio. When she closes in, Joanna suddenly lifts the leg of the mech and fires the jump jets and melts Natasha's cockpit with her inside.
Oh, I thought she got out.
No.
Nah. It's been a while since I've read that one.
Well, and that's the thing, though, too. Natasha also dies, and it's a very ignoble fashion.
Yeah.
for this extraordinarily famous character, Natasha Karinsky, to die. But
ignobly.
But yeah, because in the end, Joanna is the real warrior, so she just doesn't stop fighting even when her mech's falling apart around her. She's just the machine that will not stop functioning until it is stopped. And versus Natasha, who's your classic warrior archetype, and in the end, the former wins.
Yeah,
because in the end, war is not about glory or greater concepts. It is just the machine that kills.
Yes,
and that's what Joanna is. And her, just like the mech she drives, she is a machine made to kill.
And we don't actually ever find out what happens to Joanna, sadly.
Actually, the last book he wrote,
nope,
had her being reassigned to a Sibco training again.
No, there's a short story called Face in the Viewpoint, where Horse and she basically are reduced to being in a solemn unit, and Saloma, and they're basically just given guns and told to fight sometime in 3069, either during the troubles in the clan homeworld, because it was on the planet Marshall. So we don't know what actually happens to either Horse or Joanna.
Ooh, okay. I need to read that.
It's in the Baltech 20 Years of Art and Fiction,
Very
which
nice,
I've
very
never
nice.
gotten a copy. So if anyone
Is that
wants
even
to,
in print?
I don't know. Sadly, I'd have to check. I think it was only printed for a year.
They
So
sell the PDF on their site or
I
through
don't
drive through RPG
know.
or
I don't remember if it actually,
we should
there
look
wa-
into that. We should look
yeah, I know.
into
Anyway, so let us salute Robert.
and also just to put on the final line from his obituary, he was such a good man, but he didn't dance well.
Soleil.
So,
Okie doke. So what's the final topic?
okay, just a random item, random thought. I spoke, try doing this on future podcasts. So in one random thought item, not a huge exploration item, but just putting it out there. So just walking through Kroger today, I noticed there was a cereal box for a Captain Crunch, except it's Captain Crunch Oops All Berries. That's the name of the cereal, and it's basically just it's where Captain Crunch is normally the normal kind of
So it's
sweet things
Captain
like the
Crunch
berries,
Crunch Berries
but just all
without
the Crunch
the rest
berries.
of.
Exactly. And I'm like, huh, okay. But then I kind of started to worry a little bit because, okay, sure, it's just them saying, hey, if you really just like the berries that much, here you go. But the fact they had to put that oops on there, maybe they're just being silly, or maybe they're actually trying to test the idea that will we actually buy a factory mistake? I mean, is the next one going to be oops floor shavings?
Some would argue that Captain Crunch is floor shavings.
It's like, wow, it's the limited edition Captain Crunch that contains floor sweepings. Hooray. I'm just saying, it's just a thought that is on my mind. It's probably not the case. Like 99% likely not the case. They just wanted to be funny and naming it their special edition. But
Is it
I don't
still
know,
owned by?
man.
Is Captain Crunch still owned by Quaker?
See, I don't know. Is it Post or Quaker? Who's got Captain?
No, it's Quaker originally.
Okay, well, it's probably still with them then. But I'm just saying, this might be worth monitoring because this might be part of a larger scheme just to see if they can get the public to accept buying factory mistakes as a product.
Okey-doke.
There you go.
So
That's a random
if you see
observation.
Captain Crunch, oops, we spilled industrial waste in this. See what happens. If you, with special guest prize, if you mutate into a snoggy, please tell us.
Yes. So we don't want that to happen. I'm just saying we should probably be keeping an eye on this because that might be where they're trying to go with this. I'm just saying.
Rapid mutation and cheap labor prices here on Nerdmusement.
Or because next week it could be oops, we put in another cereal entirely. Oops, it's floor shavings, and then oops, it's toxic waste. And kids are just like, ooh, kids are just like, oh, it's a new special edition Captain Crunch. I want that. And parents don't care. Parents just buy things their kids want to get them to shut up. See,
oh my God, little Johnny, what have you become? You're all soggy and melting like
there you go.
An Edo manga. Why did this happen? Because of Captain Crunch.
You look like Tetsuya from Akira when the mutation started. But there you go. That's a random observation of the week, everybody. Just keep an eye out for that. Consider the implications, and act accordingly. That's a random observation of the week.
That's almost as bad as Haribo putting in multiple different versions of their gummy products in a bag and calling it a Star Mix.
Again, that sounds like a cover up for the corporate error at the very least, or maybe even corporate malfeasance. It's like, oh, it's not.
At least they stopped making Smurf gummies here in America. Okay, so let's wrap this up. So,
Indeed. Yes, thank you for listening, all. And remember, if it's amusing to nerds, it's Nerdmusement.
okie doke. See you next time.
Goodbye.